if I can't drink 24 beers in the next 3 hours, what are we doing? You know, I didn't really realize that wasn't like normal.
Yeah.
I don't think until after I got sober.
And that's where you're getting into this tolerance and developing dependence, especially with some of these really intense drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin. Fentanyl deaths literally went up by almost 900%. If you look at the national average of fentanyl deaths, which also increased during that time, but went up by 133%.
And she injects this thing, and man, it was like it's like an out of body experience. Like I could see, like I could feel the blood flow like stopping from like my brain. And I was like, looked at this lady, I was like, hey, something isn't right. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, something isn't. And I just locked into a cardiac arrest and convulsion.
So what I want to know is, like, was it then and there where you're like, I'm on the straight and narrow?
No, hell no, bro. The ride's just getting started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that I welcome you to the Desolate SpotLIFE podcast series. I have always believed that there is much to learn from every life lived, and we needn't look far to find lives that can inform, inspire, and instruct our own. As such, it is my sincerest desire to bring to you, in the context of health and wellness, individuals with powerful stories, living examples of failure and success, weakness and strength, so that you too can glean the wisdom to prepare and live a healthier future. Join me as your host, Dr. Adam Saucerman, as these individuals honor us with their candid stories that shine light on our own inherent weaknesses, but also our shared capacity to adapt and overcome. I genuinely hope these stories, along with humility and reflection, provide a greater endowment of agency in your life in the context of personal health and even our highest end. As always, feel free to check out our other podcast series and resources at www.desolatehealth.com, where we attempt to pursue and purvey the most relevant and cutting-edge health information in various forms to fulfill our mission of reconciliation of healthy living. Also, it is important for me to say that the content provided on this platform is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice or a substitute for professional care. I'm a licensed physician, but the information shared here does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your healthcare provider or a qualified medical professional regarding any questions or decisions about your health or medical conditions. Do not delay seeking professional advice because of information you have read or viewed here. Now let's get to it. Make it all official, everybody. Yeah. Reed Westra. I asked Reed to come on today. I've got to know Reed through the gym that my wife goes to. Occasionally I get to go there too.
Every now and then we get you in there.
I'm an old man. I feel like my lifestyle really puts a dent on my recovery. And I think that if you're going to engage in something as intense in CrossFit, you really have to have equal amount of recovery or capability, or just space it out maybe more. Yeah. And I've been much more sort of all over the place when it comes to fitness. And I kind of have to really be, my fitness routine is much more slave to my work routine, as opposed to, a lot of other people that get to work same hours and sleep absolutely. Same hours. So it's just
it makes it difficult.
But Reed is a very successcul guy. You own name some of the businesses. Like as a plug too, Reed. He's wearing his Integrity shirt, which is awesome. But that's your main. Is that your baby? That's your big.
Integrity Building Companies was the mother company that started everything. So it's morphed into kind of several layers of companies within that. So within that, there's a franchise company where we sell franchises. There's a local roofing company, IBC Roofing, is now we've for trademark reasons have left Integrity for not being able to obtain a legal trademark for the word integrity. It's too generic.
Yeah, sure.
So we now have a roofing sector that has 6 different locations currently open. 7th one opening in January, and hopefully another 8 to 10 opening next year, which is cool. We have Integrity Door Systems, which is like anything that opens from a garage door to a moving gate, to dock levelers, which is a neat business. We have a fabrication business that's metal fabrication. So they fabricate commercial metals for big construction groups, whether they're building like car dealerships or large, kind of any type of commercial based buildings that need specialty coping or specialty wall metals and stuff like that. We have Integrity Insulation Systems, which is a spray foam insulation business. So a lot of custom home builders, it's really popular on the beach areas. People want spray foam, closed cell, open cell spray foam. That business specializes in that. And then we have a holdings commercial company that does like commercial development. Like buildings and development.
How did you head towards the like construction? And I presume there was somebody that you started somewhere, and then the rest of them kind of branched off. You kind of got the blueprint, and then you're like, wow, I can do this with garage doors. I can do this with metal. I can do this.
So like a history of like building, like my curiosity with buildings, like goes back to my childhood. So like my grandfather was a builder. He was a lifelong like foreman, just a blue collar, Marine Corps in the World War II, and then got out and raised my mom and them and was a builder for years. And so like growing up, like if we ever wanted anything, my grandfather, he passed away when I was 10, but like until that point, like him or my uncle, like I wanted a skateboard ramp. Hey, come to the house. We're going to build you a skateboard ramp. We're going to show you how to do it. My father was an engineer. So my father's mind also worked very similar. So like I was just around that kind of world in terms of like, hey, people who did stuff with their hands, that I got to see them at least kind of like pique my interest in it. Like to be frank with you as a kid, I was like, well, cool, build it for me. I'll use it. Like I really just wasn't hey, as long as you'll build it for me, like I'll kind of act like I'm paying attention and it's really neat, but like, just give it to me. Like go. But I at least I was introduced to it like a young age and really thought, in the early 2000s that I was going to college, like I was, thought I wanted to build. Like I thought that was like, the original thought was I got into East Carolina, had a building management program, and I thought that was really what I wanted to do. And had some good family friends of mine who were custom home builders in the area that I grew up just south of Richmond. And he was like, hey, man, like I know you want to do this, but like I have a feeling this market's going to change in the next few years.
What year was that?
That was in 2003, he told me that.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? And he was just like, hey, if you really want to do that, like you can always come back to it. And if you're just a good person, you can learn those skills. But like, I just, he kind of had the foresight to kind of tell me, 5 to 6 years before the market really fell out of like the home building market to like, hey man, maybe try to do something else, and so, then I went to a liberal arts college. I was like, yeah, cool. Well, what's the opposite of that? Like, I'll just go to a school where I can just kind of do whatever, anything. Sure. So came back to it, like just fast forward back to now, we won't talk about all the other stuff, but like, got basically kind of recruited away from the automotive finance world. In 2018 after Florence, had like a guy came down, had a business that was in Raleigh. He was based out of Minnesota, had a few locations. And he had worked in Raleigh in 2017, and then Florence happened in 2018 in Wilmington. And so he moved his shop kind of to Wilmington because there was a huge need, obviously for like roofing. Yeah. So he just brought his 5 guys down here, and he just loved the market and was like, hey man, I love this market. But like, I thought Raleigh was like a short-term stint that an insurance company had asked me to come work to help them out. And I thought I was going to leave North Carolina, but like now I see Wilmington, like I'd like to have an office here. And he had just so happened like done the roof for like a good buddy of mine. And then asked him like, hey man, do you know anyone that would be interested in like running this business for me? And this is just a friend that I, a few years that him and I had gotten really close. And I'd always told him, hey, if the right opportunity ever came, I'd love to get out of the car business because the car business was great. But the finance part of the car business, what most people don't understand from a sales side, is like the longest hours in the dealership. I mean, I was in at 8:15 in the morning and I leave at 9 o'clock at night. Wow. You're the first one in because you're the one getting all the funding for all the deals that make the dealership run. And so you better be in there talking to banks and getting funding and making sure everything's lined up. And then, someone walks in at 7:30, wants to look at a car, you have to sit there because if they decide they say yes, then you have to have someone there that can legally do all the DMV work, legal work, financing. So it's just long hours. And I was like, look, man, it's a grateful life. It was financially rewarding, but yeah, I was at a point in my life where I was like, man, there's more to life than this, sure. And so they approached me. It's like, hey man, would you ever be interested in getting into building? I was like, kind of like wrote it off in 2003. I'd never get into that because I wasn't into it, but like I had this affinity for it. I was like, yeah, let's go to lunch. And, a couple lunches later and he made me an offer. And I was like, cool, man, I'm out. Went to the general manager who's, actually the general manager at Toyota ended up marrying my wife and I, and was like, hey man, look, if it's a good opportunity and I love you, I'll support you. And I got to work out like an 8-week notice. He's like, hey, you just got to give me some time to get you replaced. I was like, yeah, man, cool. No problem. But yeah, I came into it and basically got introduced, what I had grown up around was like custom home builders and people done everything. And I hadn't really looked ever like at trade specific, like roofing, siding, gutters, windows. There's a lot more people who are specialized in certain trades. And I had never really paid attention to that specifics of it. And so, yeah, opened up with roofing, man, and just kind of opened my eyes up to like the specialties of the trades. and kind of saw his model and was like, oh, this is really cool. And then this is really inefficient, like these just, there's certain aspects of certain tradespeople that for good or worse are stuck in like the 50s and 60s and 70s. Like everything's written down by hand. Here's your bid. Hey, thanks so much. Like, oh yeah, I kind of gonna do that. Like there's just there's not a lot of structure in a lot of those businesses. And it's not a bad thing. Those people who do it that are, father and son or a family owned, it's like, hey man, it's going to provide them a really good living and they're going to be fine. But it was like, there's this part of my brain that's always like, well, if one store is good, two's got to be good, three's got to be good. I was like, well, this model isn't replicatable and scalable.
Right.
And so I kind of started just, spent that first, like basically 2 years looking at it going, man, you can improve this. You can change this. You can give your employees a better life instead of making them 1099. You can give them a W-2. You can give them the ability to go buy houses. You can give them the ability to kind of make their lives better, if you just set it up in a different way. And so I spent some time doing that, and I got to a point where the guy who owned that business just didn't live here, and so I just offered to buy him out. I said, hey man, let me buy this location from you. There's some things I'd like to change and do. And we had that conversation like 10 o'clock one morning, at like noon. He's like, hey man, I'm good. I don't need you anymore. You can leave your keys in your...
He said that to you?
Yeah, just called me back. Said, hey man, I'm good. You can just leave your keys and your credit card at the office, and good luck. And
oh man,
I was like, cool. I was like, roll, like, let's go, gang. I'm out. Like, let's go do it on our own. You know?
Yeah. And you didn't have any non-competes, obviously.
No, I went to my. I did, but it was just a Minnesota written non-compete, not North Carolina. Nothing was.
Sure.
A lot of nuances to that world that people don't really understand. That without a good attorney and whatever, like, doesn't really mean anything, especially in a right to work state. Yeah. You have to be way specific on some of those things, and his was not. And so he tried, and then I had an attorney send a letter back, and then I never heard from him again. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like looked at my wife, who's like always been supportive of like whatever I wanted to do. It's like, hey, we're selling everything, and I'm cashing out, and like we're going for it. She was like, yeah, let's roll. Just like sold a house, sold a boat, sold all the toys, cashed out 401ks, cashed out stocks.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, hey, here's the money. We've got like 6 months worth of bills. If we like, here's the 4 employees I want to pay, I can pay them. I sat down with the CFO. I was like, all right, man, we can pay everybody. And we can pay our bills and have $300 extra money a month for 6 months. I was like, and then we're done. Like, then we're like, we'll have to sell everything. So, I had to like get rid of the house. Like I sold everything but the house. I cashed out everything I could. Like just went super small. Like lived super small. Not that we had an extravagant life, but we had luxuries in life that like most people don't have. Like we had the boat, and we had it at a dry slip, and we had all these things that like were great. We're fine for the lifestyle that we had. But it was like, hey, if we're going all in, we're going all in. You know what I mean? Like, hey, as long as we have a roof over our head and we can move, like.
You didn't have any kids at that time, did you?
So yeah, we were having a kid in 35 days.
Wow.
So that was December 11th of 2020 is when that phone call happened.
It didn't change any. You felt like it was not.
It was December 11th of 2020, and our due date for our first Tillman was February 14th. Was our the projected due.
Yeah,
So we were like 60 days away from having our first child. And I was like, we'll make it work because like I'm gonna provide. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was just like, whatever, we're gonna go for it.
Sure.
And so that launched the Integrity. We formulated a LLC on the Secretary of State and opened January 1, 2021.
Wow.
And here we are today.
That's crazy, man.
Crazy.
I've always been somewhat risk averse my whole life in general. I mean, I feel like to some extent, it's paired with, I love medicine. I love the science behind medicine, helping people, all those things. But there's still that sort of aspect. I had, academic capacity to, beat other people, so to speak, because there's some competition to it. You got to beat everybody else out to be able to get into a medical school or whatever. It's competitive. And you sort of have this assurance at the end of your professional degree, you're going to make some sort of like, desirable lifestyle income.
Absolutely.
So it did play a role. And I mean, initially I was in a pharmacy school, and I decided, I was like, I'm going to become a doctor. So I switched from pharmacy over to medicine after I was already in pharmacy school, which kind of sucked. I felt bad that I took a spot in pharmacy school and switched out to medicine. But I've seen friends and other people where they make these moves And I just like hats off. I mean, I can't fathom it, but I mean, imagine, you've done
It's
your
crazy
math.
for people.
You've done your math, right? You saw, and
Yeah.
you've had some understanding. I can't say that I've never made anything so drastic. I mean, I recently, with work and stuff, so I've made some decisions that have been like, I've been to that point where I'm fine to jump off the ledge, but you've done all the math and you know what it, like basically how it has to add up, and you're just kind of like, it is what it is. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like the common misconception with a lot of people, from the outside world and a lot of people who take those risks, a lot of people that don't understand it from the outside look at it and go, dude, that guy took the craziest risk, or that girl took the craziest risk, and I can't believe she did that, or I can't believe he did that. And like, yeah, it's risky, but it's calculated,
Absolutely.
right? Like
Absolutely.
what most people don't understand is like, hey, there's a calculation. Like this isn't just
For
like,
sure.
like there was a business plan in place that I wrote. Like I met with a CFO, like I met with a certified accountant. That's like, hey man, you've been around business accounting for 15 years. This is what I think it is. If I do this, does it work?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like, hey, as long as I work hard, like I know the model works. I've seen it work. Like I've seen other people do it. Do I think we can make the model better? 100%. But like I know at the fundamental level, if I work, we're gonna be fine, right?
Yeah.
And dude, it's funny, man. Actually, we just had this conversation like a week ago, and my accountant was like, "Dude, you're nuts." He's like, "There's no way this is true. Like this business model is not accurate." And I'm like, "Dude, it's accurate." He's like, "No way." He's like, "You're kind of full of crap." And like he literally looked at me after sitting in, and he had done my taxes for whatever, like 4 or 5 years, and he just goes, "What are you going to do in 6 months?" I was like, "Well, like, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, when it doesn't work, what's your plan?" It's like, bro, it's gonna work. Like, this isn't like, it's not like, it just never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And it's like funny because he's kind of like what you said, like, he's like, you find in like accounting worlds and stuff like that, those people are risk adverse. They're very calculated.
Sure.
Hey, they know if I go get a CPA license and I do this, my family's going to have a sustainable living for the
right.
next
Yeah.
60 years.
Yeah.
And like a doctor, hey, I know I can go practice medicine and I'm going to make a good living for the next 60 years.
Sure.
All I have to do is keep my head on straight and stay current and like do the
right.
right thing. And like, I'll be fine. And you're going to have a great life. Like you're going to live a fantastic life.
Sure.
Excuse me.
All right.
But yeah, so it's just funny when people are like, y'all just take these risks. And I'm like, yeah. And some of them, like, dude, I try to open a bingo hall and like, yeah, like it cost me 60 grand, but like
That one still.
and people are like, dude, what'd you open a bingo hall for? I'm like, dude, because the upside was like, could have been like a 5 to 6 digit income a month. Like had it worked and had I had the time and energy to continue to do it. And like at that point in my life, I didn't have the resources to like continue to, like at some point it's like, all right, man, I'm losing $5 grand a month. I'm good. Like I'm out. Like this just doesn't worth it. But like, look, what comes with that typically is like, hey, you're gonna lose some and you're gonna win some,
That's right.
And as long as you're like willing to accept that, like, hey, what's the worst case scenario? And the worst case scenario is like I'm out 50 grand. Well, like I have enough work ethic to go, cool. Like I'll make it up quick.
Sure.
And it just scares people,
Risk and reward. I mean, if you look at markets, if you look at anybody who's like venture capitalist, or if you just look at markets, if you just take the stock market, majority of the stock market earnings have come from 20%, 20% of all the like business. So it's kind of like you're looking for the home run, you got to be willing to take some strikeouts if you're looking for
Yeah. I mean, it's like, right. If you want to compare it to the market, like it's the Warren Buffett model, right? A doctor, an attorney, a pharmacy guy, a lawyer, whatever. Hey, that profession is like you putting 10% in S&P 500 every year and you're going to be fine. Like, yes, if you pick your head up in 50 years, you're going to have, $10 million sitting there and it took you 50 years to get it, but you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the Richard Bransons of the world. They're like, all right, bro, cool. I'll do that. But like, I'm going to go invest in this real quick. Or the Elons. It's like, hey, I'm going to start with PayPal, or I'm going to do this. And it's like, it's like, it's not that they weren't smart enough to understand. Like, hey, dude, like, look, Warren Buffett's a brilliant man. Sure. Like, that model works.
Yeah.
But like, he also like, on the back end, he has a lot of other investments that like people don't realize. Like, well, you also own Berkshire Hathaway, and also own real estate, and also, But it's like, what's your appetite for it, right?
Yeah.
And certain people have certain appetites for like certain risk, and
That's right.
not, and that's okay. So the world needs all of us, right?
Absolutely.
You couldn't all be like me, or we'd all be crazy.
There's some people that are going to gravitate towards W-2. Some people are going to gravitate towards 1099.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the business,
and that's okay. And the world, and businesses like me, and we need everybody. Like it doesn't work unless there's people who are
Sure.
I want to just labor and I'm cool with this because I know I'm good here, and that's great.
right.
Like my business needs that person.
That's right.
And I want that person's like, hey, cool, man. Like let me give you that job. You know? But it doesn't survive without those people.
All right, we're going to jump off real quick and go to, I want to start back. Like, let's go back to, one of the big things I wanted to bring Reed on. Ultimately, we're going to plug Reed's gym, which I think is phenomenal, and his relationship with fitness and CrossFit. But I want to go back. So take me through your yesteryears of going in. I actually want to know a little bit about you because I know you played D1 soccer, at least for a period of time.
Yeah, so I had a, growing up, I was like, one of the things I'll give my parents like a lot of credit for, that like looking now having kids, like I didn't appreciate it probably until now, was like they encouraged me to just do like everything growing up. You know what I mean? Like I think I started playing travel soccer at like 9, but like until that point I like played baseball. We did swim team, swim team at the time. There was like year-round swim that we would do, and then summer swim that we would do. And then there was basketball in the wintertime, and then track and field. And so like, just always like, hey, they're like, hey, if you want to do it, like we'll support it basically. And to be frank, one of the blessings that like God gave me was like, just like a pretty decent natural athletic ability. So like, if I would put a little bit of effort into it, it's like, oh man, I'm halfway decent, whatever. And then like in middle school, I got introduced to football, and like I had to work a deal on like, I'll never forget, like my dad and I had to sit with like the Pee Wee football coach. Like, look, man, soccer's priority. I can be at 2 practices a week and I'll play in your games, but like, that's all I can give you. And he kind of like laughed at me and my dad, and he's like, all right, well, like just come to practice. Like, let me just kind of see what you were. And it was just like, I weighed, 130 pounds soaking wet, but I was fast. And he's like, all right, cool. I'll make that deal. So like, I think I would practice like football like twice a week, and everyone else would practice like 5 days a week and play on Saturday. And then I would go to soccer 3 times a week. Then I go to baseball twice a week. And so it was just a whole lot of like, kind of running around that my parents allow me to do, which really continued through like, through high school. And by the time I got to like sophomore year of high school, I played basketball my freshman year with football and soccer. And then by sophomore year, it was like, hey, like pick 2. Like, this is crazy.
Sure.
Like, just, you can do 2, but like pick 2. And so I ended up just sticking with football and soccer. And just had an affinity for football, man. Just loved it. I don't know what it was about like the adrenaline rush that football gave me, but like just hitting people or whatever it was that just like got me like, football is very much like an instant reward and a reset thing, where it's like instant play, break, instant play, break, and either you're a hero or you're nothing, and it resets every 7 seconds, and so like the older, as I got into my later teens, like I gravitated more towards football and like really wanted to like kind of do that. But the other blessing was like, I'm 5'10", 5'11", I was 160 pounds the senior year of high school, and you're fast, but you're not really desirable for you're not really desirable for the next level.
That's right.
Division III for sure, but like, the ego in me is like, no, I'm better than that. It's like, yeah, dude, but you're 5'10" and 165. I don't care how fast you are. Like you're going to get killed when you get, and it's funny now, cause now there's guys in the NFL and leagues that are that size, and the game has kind of changed and it's evolved. But like growing up, it was like power I formation and 2 wide receivers. And if you weren't 6'5", you weren't playing wide out. And if you weren't 220 pounds, you weren't playing running back. You know what I mean? It's just like, it was just a different game back then. And so, and soccer, kind of, I was really blessed that like the team that we grew up with in Richmond was like a nationally ranked team, and we won states, 6 years from the time we were like 11 till we were 18, and we were ranked nationally, and just had a lot of good kids, that went and played at Chapel Hill and Bucknell, and like just had a kind of a unique situation where we had a really good group of guys, that, I think the team, we had like 17 guys on it. And I want to say like 11 of them went and played college ball,
6 years they
which
won
was,
the champion.
So we won the state tournament, I think 6 years out of the 9 that we could.
Wow.
I think it started at U10 or U11. I want to say state cup started. And and so like we had a really good team. We just had a lot of good kids that, DJ Short went and played at Queens College with Kevin, and we just let's see, Dave went to Bucknell. I think, Austin went to VMI. I mean, we just had kids that like went everywhere and just like, and so it was kind of unique, it's just kind of like, it's one of the good and the bads of growing up in a large city is when you got a million people in a population, and you kind of have a powerhouse team, you're able to kind of pick from. You have 70 guys come try out for a 17-person team that are all pretty good, And it was funny, man, because as I got to that age, my coach and I really like butted head. We had a Scottish guy who was our coach, and I love him to death, man. John Addison. He was great.
Has he got the accent?
Yeah, he's got a little accent. And this guy was, 5'8" and a fireball and so good with a soccer ball on his foot, and grew up and played professionally in Scotland and then moved over to the States and got married and had some kids. And he would just look at me and be like, man, if you just gave a crap, like, you'd be good. I'm like, yeah, what do I care, man? I'm here at practice. Like, I'll show up. Like, it's fine. And I just had a bad attitude, like when I was young, like not necessarily a bad attitude, but just like, if I'm this good, I don't have to put this much effort into it. Why do I need to put any more effort into it? And and I think like looking back now, if I was like, it's like, hey man, if you would have just like cared at all, like they would just, people would, it was funny, man. Like I think UNCW had like sent me like 6 letters. They come play for us. And I was like, I'm not, who's going to go to Wilmington? There's nothing down there. And like, that was my attitude back then. It's like, hey, no, here's a great opportunity at a great school. I'm like, I'm good. I don't want to move down there. It's not Chapel Hill. Like that was my mindset. I was like, if it's not UNC Chapel Hill, I'm not going to UNC anything,
I get it. Yeah.
Just dumb, man, just young and dumb and didn't really understand. And so like ended up just, had a lot of offers actually to go kick football in Division I.
Sure.
And then my ego again was like, I'm not a kicker. Like I'm a wide receiver and a free safety. Like if you're not going to ask me to come play that, I'm not coming to see you, Marshall. No, Delaware, I'm out. Like if you don't want me to come play this, I'm too good. And whatever. So long story, ended up back in Hampden-Sydney College, which is a small all-male institute in Farmville, Virginia. It's like the 5th oldest university in the country. It's founded in 1776. Oh, wow. It's one of 2, I believe, all-male institutions left.
What's the name
in
of
the country? Hampden-Sydney College.
Hampden-Sydney.
So
1776
was when it was founded. So the only schools that are older than it are William and Mary, Washington and Lee, Mary Washington, and I think one other one. But it's the 5th oldest college in the. It's 5th oldest college in the country. So it's crazy. They have a plaque on campus, and they have had a student participate in every war that America's ever been a part of since the Revolution. And they have a plaque of like all the student and what their name was and when they were there.
Holy smokes. It's
crazy. So yeah, it's a really cool, beautiful campus in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. It's about an hour west of Richmond. And like I said, it's all male, which has its perks, believe it or not. People are like, dude, why would you do that? And it's cool because I can tell you, I went there for 4 years and I never locked my car once and I never locked my dorm room once. And there's an honor code there, and everyone lives and breathes by it. And the honor code is enforced by the student body for the student body. So you get caught cheating on a test and or whatever, and your professor literally walks into a 4th-year student and who's the president of the student body and says, hey, this kid was caught cheating. And then he gets tried by a jury of his peers, and verdict, they decide whether they want to kick him out, whether they want to give him a second chance.
Wow.
All run by students, and the school doesn't have any say in it. So it's very old school, and you had to sign your first week when you come in for orientation as a freshman. They have a huge lamb skin. It's still their tradition. You go into a church, and they say, hey, this is, we're Hampden-Sydney men. We don't lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And if you do, you will be removed from this scroll. And then the entire freshman class, pew by pew, gets up and gets an old ink pill and Quinn and signs their name on a lambskin piece of paper that then gets hung in the dining hall. Yeah. And so the active classes, and if someone gets expelled, they pull the thing down and they put a red quill through it and they hang it back up. So
is it a Christian college?
It's a Presbyterian-based college,
okay. Yeah.
But it's not like that's a fundamental. But it's not like there's no
It's not specific. It's founded on sort of principles.
Yeah,
it's
correct. It's a
itself.
liberal arts college, right? So it's you're pre-med, you're pre-law, you're a history major, you're an econ major, but it's it's just an old school. I mean, like we had gun lockers in the bottom of our dorms. So like, you want to go shooting? Cool. Here's your gun locker. And the bottom floor was a gun locker, and you'd have a thumbprint scan to get in, and then you could have your own gun locker, and you walk in and handsprint, you keep your guns on campus. And
I wonder if that is still there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Really?
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's just like a very traditional, like, I mean, like I did our exams. I mean, the biggest class I had freshman year was 20 guys. Yeah. Smallest class was 4. I think like industrial organization and economics, my senior year was 4 of us in there.
Wow.
And it's very specific, and your professors, and you get some funny stories out of it because it's small. There was an econ professor I had, I think my junior year. I think it was like introduction into markets, and it was a class on like introducing products into markets and stuff like that. And there was probably 7 of us in this class, and we were all juniors and seniors. And we had this kid named Will Smith. And it was only twice a week. It was an 8:30 to 10 o'clock class, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll never forget it. And Dr. Thornton was this awesome old little lady, and she was crazy. Just one of those crazy professors and funny. And Will had missed Tuesday, and it's in a school like that, you can't really miss class because like they know you. There's 7 guys in there, like they know you. And so he missed on Tuesday, and on Thursday he wasn't there again. And this guy happened to be the president of a fraternity there. And so she goes, does anybody know where Will's room is? And she's like, yeah. She's like, cool, pack your stuff. And so at like 8:40 in the morning, we left this building and we walked down his fraternity house, 7 guys and a teacher. And she's like, what room is his? And we walked upstairs to his bedroom in his fraternity house and woke him up with other company in his bed. And Dr. Thornton didn't care. And she said, since it's hard for you to get to class, Mr. Smith, we just figured we'd bring class to you. And she said, boys, please come in and take a seat. And so we had class from 9 until 10 o'clock in this kid's fraternity house room.
Is that legal? I mean,
and there was he had a young company that was asleep under the bed cover, and she just didn't move for the hour that we were in there. And Will sat there, and we had class. And at the end of it, she just looked up and said, next time you're probably going to come to my classroom, isn't that right, Mr. Smith? He said, yes, ma'am. And we walked out of the fraternity house, and that was the last time we'll ever miss a class.
Fantastic story.
But it's like that's the stuff that and I needed that, to be honest with you. Like my dad and sister both went to Virginia Tech, and I'd gotten in there, and I knew there was something kind of inside of me. It's like, hey, you put me in a class with like 1,000 people my freshman year, I'm not going. Like I'm not disciplined enough at this age. Like I'll party, I'll do whatever I want. Like, I'm not showing up if I'm a stat on the wall.
That's right.
I needed that discipline. And one of the things that Hampden-Sydney was good about was through your senior year, you had to take an 8 or an 8:30 a.m. class every day. It's like, hey, the real world demands that you're going to wake up and go to class. And so when you're here, you're going to learn that like you're going to wake up and you're going to go to class every day. And so it was good for me because it created like an exercise of discipline. That sports, look, I played football my freshman year, and then I had a resentment towards soccer for some reason, and then I ended up playing soccer my sophomore and junior year, and then got medical redshirted my junior year for taking some medicine. That wasn't really medicine.
Let's get to that. So tell me then, I mean, here we are, now we're at college. Tell me like the beginnings before we got to the point where we get medically redshirted.
Yeah.
What was your initial contact with substances and
I think like most high school kids in like the late 90s, early 2000s, like I'm like in high school, people are drinking and hanging out and having a fun time. And I had been removed from a high school. I went to private school my sophomore year my freshman year into my sophomore year, and I had been asked to leave a high school at the beginning of my sophomore year for possessing and distributing marijuana, that I claimed wasn't mine, and big rigmarole. That obviously was like a big shock to my parents because like my sister was older than me and was the godchild, and I was kind of the crazy like, if I could sell weed and make money, it'd be great, and I was like 15 and didn't really understand the consequences of what I was doing, and just young and dumb, and got caught. Like a guy I'd sold some weed to got caught with it, and then told on me, and of course he's 15 and scared, and I'm like, you're a punk, bro. You shouldn't open your mouth, and so then I won't roll on anybody, and then they're getting mad at me, and they're like, well, if you don't want to tell us, you're gonna have to leave the school. And I said, well, I guess I'm leaving the school, and And so like I had like introduction into that probably like, 8th and 9th grade year. My sister was a little bit older. People in the neighborhood I grew up with were all probably 3 to 4 years older than me. So I was probably getting introduced to stuff a little bit before most of my peer group, simply because I just happened to be I was like the runt of like the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of recreational fun, like whatever. It really wasn't a big deal. Like, when you're, 14 and think smoking a cigarette's hilarious. Sure. Like, this is funny. I'm stealing a pack of cigarettes. And you smoke 6 of them, you don't know what you're doing. You're not inhaling it, and you throw them away, and you think it's like you're the cool kid for doing it. Like, that was kind of most of it. And in high school, like, we'd party like on the weekends, like at someone's house. We had a couple friends' parents like, look, if you want to come drink, cool, you can come, leave your keys. You're not leaving my house. Like whatever. And so it wasn't like we were irresponsible or doing anything super. I don't think other 16, 17, 18-year-olds weren't. I mean, look, there's people who don't do that. Great. I love it. I wasn't me at that age, but we also just weren't like idiots. Like we weren't drinking and driving. We were just like, cool, we'll all go to this person's house and 20 of us will get hammered and sleep here and wake up tomorrow and go home and whatever. But it was fun. Like at that age for me, it was fun. Like, I had a good relationship. I'd say it wasn't I didn't have a bad relationship with alcohol or any other substance at that point in my life. And really into college was the same thing. Like, I'd party. I probably knew at some point in college, like when I would drink differently than some people. Like, just like, man, if I could get blacked out, fantastic. Like I thought that was just like normal. Like I just didn't realize like, hey, some people just go have like 6 beers over a 6-hour period. And that's like a beer an hour. And like, they're having a good time. And I'm like, well, if I can't drink 24 beers in the next 3 hours, what are we doing? I didn't really realize that wasn't like normal.
Yeah.
I don't think until after I got sober, because at the time I was like, oh, this is what people do.
I gotta ask. So this is from my perspective. I hate the way alcohol makes me feel post, right? Like, so, I mean, and I'm just saying, even now, I feel like the negative effects from even just like one drink, like there's consequences to it. But like what little bit of contact at all that I had with alcohol whenever I was younger, I drank more than one occasion, but one time for sure when I got legitimately like blitz drunk, I felt so bad for so long. Like even it's so long after like the hangover and the feeling. Did you experience that, or do you feel like the pleasure at the time of going to the blackout drunkenness like justified or made it totally fine for that next day, or did you just not really? It wasn't that big of a deal the next day.
Probably like a combination. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if it was, and it kind of sounds weird, like the level of fitness and physical ability that I was of what I was demanding of my body from the time that I was 13 till like through college was like, I don't remember a time in my life from the time I was probably 12 on that I wasn't physically active 6-7 days a week, like literally. Practices, because soccer practice was 3 nights a week, football practice was 5 nights a week. We had games on Fridays. We had soccer tournaments every Saturday, Sunday. And so like if I had a chance on like a Saturday night and I had to do anything on Sunday, like I didn't care. Like because I would just pass out at 3 a.m. And if I woke up at 10, like my body was like, bro, it's time to go. Like, let's move.
You weren't hungover. You weren't hungover. Feeling terrible. I mean, in college, like as I got introduced into other substances and stuff like that, like the hangover started to change. Yeah. But like with just alcohol, I never really had like, because I was kind of like, I had this sick part of me. It's like, well, if I'm feeling that bad, I'm just going to throw up and then we'll just keep drinking. And that's what I would do. The reason why I even bring it up is because from a medical perspective and someone who cares for people, I feel like it's interesting because I think there's probably a neurologic or like a neurochemical basis of some people probably maybe there's a different tolerance in that after all these aldehydes and the breakdown products of alcohol generally make you feel horrible. Some people probably don't have the same negative effects or they don't feel it quite as bad. The level of those aldehydes and stuff after the alcohol gets broke down is going to be the same, but it just might not have the same impacts on some people's brains. But for me, it definitely was.
Yeah, it did it in my younger, I can tell you in my younger years through my like mid-20s, I didn't. Unless I had other drugs that I had taken that definitely had that impact on me. Alcohol alone was never, I was like, whatever.
When was the other substances start to creep in?
Yeah, probably in college, like in college. So what happened was, kind of how we got reset on this. Like I had friends like in college that like I'll tell you like my drug of choice. Once I was probably like 21, to like party on was like cocaine. Like I would drink, but like if we could have fun all weekend, like I'd go get some cocaine and like, hey, we were having fun all weekend.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like a way to, it was like this social thing for me to just keep drinking all weekend. Like I didn't look at it as anything other than like, oh, I just have the ability to stay awake and stay awake for 25 hours, 30 hours. Like, cool, whatever. Like, this is
what
great.
it would do? I mean, it would able to keep
originally, yeah, it would, when you first start, like your body has like, whoa, hey, wait a minute. I mean, like dude, it's funny. Like you look back at like the 70s and 80s, like those old movies, and you see people just dancing and sweating. It's like, yeah, like if you don't become addicted and you would just use it like a drug, like, yeah, it's like an amphetamine. It's almost like not like an Adderall or a meth, but it would wake you up. I mean, it would sober you up real quick. And so like I could be 20 beers deep and do some cocaine and feel like I hadn't drank at all.
So we got to touch on the movie. Like the movie is so crass and terrible, but Wolf of Wall Street, the scene where he is like blitzed out. Yeah. I don't know what he snorts. Was it cocaine? Maybe, I don't know, but it was like, he just had to get to maybe the cocaine, and all of a sudden he was like
pounding his chest.
Then he's ready to roll.
Yeah,
was that you?
You're a new person, right? Like, so like one of those things that it's like, look, I'm not an advocate for it. Like, I don't think that especially in today's environment, in today's world, with just what goes on with like cartels and who brings these drugs in, I think it's different than it was 25 years ago.
Without question.
You know what I mean? So like, let me be clear, I'm not an advocate for that.
Well, anybody watches this knows that's not the case.
Yeah, at the time, man, it was like, dude, this is the best pick me up in the world. You know what I mean? Like, because for me, it was an excuse. Well, I could start drinking at 3 p.m. And if everyone else didn't really want to start, you'd have like pre-games, and pre-games would typically start at 9 or 10 p.m. and then they'd go to a party at midnight. Well, like I'd been drinking for 6 hours.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more drunk than you.
Right.
So I just took this drug. It sobered me up.
It's crazy.
And I just keep going. And let's go. We're going out. Let's go all night. And like any medical record would probably tell you, like, eventually that hedonic set point or that reset point that was here is now moved to here, is moved to here, is moved to here, is moved to here, is moved to here, right? And so whatever that neurological, I'm an idiot, so I don't know what that would be, but like whatever that reset button is, that like, the first time you do it, it doesn't take much, but like your body adapts and originally it was like, bro, this is great. I just party all night, and it was a social thing. It was like, hey man, we do it on the weekend, cool, whatever, back to school, whatever. We're at school on Monday, we're working.
Reed, just so you know, just so everybody's listening, you're talking about tolerance in a sense of you take the drug, it sort of creates this huge receptor release, whether it's dopamine, mix of dopamine, norepinephrine, depends on what drug that you're taking. But so you get this, huge euphoria or positive effect from it. It's part of the body's homeostasis and the way things work, but essentially like increasingly you're going to need more and more of that substance to be able to get the same effect. And as a general rule, the returns continue to go down. You just can't reproduce that first, the first time that you get to use.
You're chasing that. You're chasing that. You're
what do you call? What's that? That's chasing the.
You're chasing the high. You're chasing that feeling, right? You're chasing that initial whatever it was, and it never works, right? It's like it's the hamster on the wheel. Like, just newsflash, if you're at this point in your life and you think it's going to get better, I tell you from personal experience, it doesn't. Like, that point never gets back. You know what I mean? It's just it's just you're just digging a hole. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That hole never gets filled back in. Just FYI. So if you're listening to this, it's never going to get better. Go get some help. It's cool. There's a lot of us that are like that,
So I'll talk. I can talk for just a second about it. So, like on a neurophysiologic level, you can imagine that your brain. I mean, there's a couple different ways you could describe it, and some of it's theory because we're looking at how this works from all sort of different angles, from chemistry and just examples of people and personal experience. But these people give it accounts. But in a sense, you take some drug that creates a euphoria, and your sort of normal, like, neurochemical milieu will never let you get it. It won't. Sex, like they've compared, like if you take percentages, sex, like if that's 100% on the Richter scale.
Yep.
I think that cocaine is 250 or 225 or something, but like methamphetamine's 1,000, like in the euphoria plus whatever of whenever you take it. This is just an example. Yeah. Based on like the neurochemical release and the effects that it has on you. So like you're going way above anything physiologic that would ever happen. Yeah. As a general rule, like you really got to do something wild to sort of get that, neurochemical release to create that sense or that feeling. And I think to just imagine it in your brain, you're sort of in homeostasis in this set point where your normal day is like you've got a little bit of weight on, like we'll say, pain and a little bit of weight on pleasure, and they're in balance, and that's sort of where you stand. When you take the drug, you are really tipping the balance towards the pleasure, but immediately, because your body's like homeostatic, it kind of is always trying to seek back the balance. So in some senses, it's one of two things. Either A, your body is doing something on the pain side to like try to balance that back out. But then the problem is once like the thing's gone, the balance now tips towards the pain. And that's that post after you've been high and you feel like crap, and it takes time for the balance to sort of reset. But like over time, you start to continue to wear out the plus side of things where you can't get the same effect. And you get deeper and deeper into this scenario where now, like at baseline, the scale just sort of sits on the negative, and you've got to just take something to get back to normal.
Yeah.
And that's where you're getting into this tolerance, developing dependence, and then it just gets really ugly really fast, especially with some of these really intense drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, like any, narcotics, like all those drugs, I would say, this some of the stuff is debated, like in the news. People talk about, so about Oregon being legalization of drugs. So as a case study, if you look at Oregon alone, like fentanyl deaths, like went up during the time period from 2019, whenever this was, initiated, up to 2022, or we'll say 2023, fentanyl deaths literally went up by almost 900%. If you look at the national average of fentanyl deaths, which also increased during that time, but went up by 133%. So like, I'm sort of getting off on a tangent, but like my feeling is about, and a lot of the argument against like, oh, we should still legalize drugs to remove the stigma, which I'm all for. I do want to destigmatize drugs, and everybody should, because we don't need like, oh, you're just a drug. It's just so messed up, like to look at some human with like a, judgmental and looking down on them because they're using drugs. But long and short of it is that like those drugs, there's no good outcomes for cocaine. There's no good outcomes for methamphetamine. And there's no good outcomes for heroin, like in a specific case use for like maybe medically, right? We use opioids, you broke your leg or something. That's fantastic. But just giving people free reign to, use, they just tend to lead to death and devastation. And as a general rule, there's got to be like, I'm much more pro of like they need to be a very specific place where potentially they're going to be used. Like cocaine was once used in like the surgical fields because it vasoconstriction stuff.
Yeah, I'm not intelligent in that world. Like I just don't know anything about that world personally, in terms of like the medical side of it.
But from
the outside, from a living application side of it, right? I can agree to disagree in a certain aspect, right? From the user side of it, that would have been the one using it, and 900% increase. More regulation on that increases what?
We talking about black markets or
correct, right? So black market use, right? Like, because like the fear over marijuana was there for years.
Sure,
right?
I don't know what. I think that was in the 70s or 80s. It's the gateway drug. The
gateway drug, right? Well, like dates back to William Randolph Hearst. You hear Joe Rogan talk about all the time, like William Randolph Hearst, who owned one of the largest newspapers, who happened to also own like some of the largest timberland in the company. And then they came out with the decorticator that made hemp easier to process, and he was like, "Well, no, I have billions of dollars worth of trees, right?" And look, I agree with you. Like I think, heroin, meth, coke. They're a problem, and I think it's a really, really complex problem to try to solve. I don't know that keeping them illegal is the answer, or like a safe place to use them, or some type of regulation on alcohol is more deadly than any of them. Alcohol, as a number, because of its use, is easy to
because it's ubiquitousness,
right? Correct, right? Because it's all over, right? And so, the legalization. The people who profit the most right now are people who are cutting cocaine and heroin and meth with fentanyl, right? Drug cartels. I mean, they're not coming from. It's not coming from a, hey, here's a hemp farm or a weed farm in California, and here's what it is, and here's the THC levels, and do you want to buy it? Cool. This has way more THC than whatever. It's like, no, this is a mule that brought this in over the border illegally. Yeah, and it's been chopped 3 times by 6 different chop houses. And it's been taken from a kilo of cocaine to an eighth of cocaine, and mostly fentanyl chopped into it, and it kills people, right? Like, which is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, and I don't know that like, you know, I'll listen to other people talk about it, and there's certain, like, look, if you fully legalize it, it's going to kill people 100%. Like, is there going to be certain people who have problems with it 100%? Is it as bad of a stigma as some people think? Meh, probably not. There's people who might try it and go, yeah, I'm good. Just like alcohol. I mean, there's normal people around that can have a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine, and they're like, bro, I'm good. I don't like the effect of the hangover. I don't like the effect of whatever.
Sure.
You give someone a known quantity and or equation scientifically of meth, and they go, man, that was terrible. I'm good. But we don't do that now with alcohol. And I don't care. Like, look, man, whatever. We live in a free country. I believe the beautiful thing about America is you can choose.
Sure. I'll just clarify. Like, I'm a libertarian at heart, in that what I wish is for, it's your life. You do whatever you want with it. Like in the final sense, but like in the just practical sense, like there's just this reality that a bunch of people died, which is, it's a tragedy. I do like the illegal portion, like definitely, like if you look at alcohol, so alcohol prohibition, that was a constitutionally, like it was banned from the United States of America in 1920, and later was, you know, reversed, I think, in 1933. You know, obviously alcohol rates did plummet. There was also massive black market, which, you know, I haven't done all my history, but it's kind of a fascinating piece of history, like the moonshine runners and stuff. And that's coming from back where I came from, Kentucky, West Virginia. These boys were moonshiners.
Yeah, it blew up, right? I mean, it made the Kennedys and all the other people super famous and super wealthy because they were running illegal alcohol.
But it's super interesting fact of America. But if you look at the overall picture, there were like significant stats. There was definitely because of a decrease in alcohol. Now, and I'm not a proponent as this goes even like with diets and nutrition and fitness. I'm not a restrictionist. Like, I think everything in this world for the most part is like great and in the right place in the right way. And you can use it for good or you can use it for evil. But I think like I would go with the proponents of that. Yes, I think there needs to maybe be infrastructure and education for people about this stuff. Before you would ever try to like manipulate things around to where it's no longer this legalization or the, you know, illegalization and the stigmatization. But I think it's kind of like we're all people, and the reality is like you got to work with what you got. We are it's the same way with food and some other things. We have this natural tendency towards addiction, something that shoots up our dopamine. Like we tend to all use in excess, and that is just part of our nature. And so like big picture, it's kind of like we were all here and we all have that capacity. And there's a lot of people that are way more vulnerable, a lot of the lower socioeconomic people and the people that are sort of in these areas, you know, especially younger people. They're like literally one of the highest things to, you know, become like someone who abuses drugs or get addiction is exposure and like access. So like having exposure to something and access is like the biggest probably risk factor for someone that's going to go on. There's other things that are going to play into it, but this is a major role player. But it's kind of like we were all here in this room, and there's this one room that goes into like, you know, fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, whatever. And it's kind of like nobody really talked about or that we had like full understanding, and they just open up a door, and it's like, you know, we just like bugs fall in the light, like, ooh, you know, a bunch of people's going to end up addicted, dead, whatever. Yeah. I feel like maybe there needs to be this, hold on, I get it, because I'm in a total agreement with being a libertarian in that sense. Like, I want people to be free to just live their life, make the decisions they're going to make, but maybe we should prepare people for that door whenever it gets open and crack it a little bit and sort of see how it goes and like pivot and move to where we can like move into this freedom. But as a general rule, I will say like methamphetamine, just as a general rule, like it's not, there's no goodness in your life for it. Everybody, I've never seen anybody like, you know, it's good. Like just a little bit of meth good for you. Like, no, maybe in a case base, if you're Germany and you're wanting to invade France in 3 days and stay awake straight, they were on, I think it was Pervitin, I think was the name of it. At that time, they were literally on methamphetamine for 3 days up. And sure, like there would be a case base for maybe why you use it. But even then, like I guarantee those guys' lives.
Oh, they crashed hard.
I didn't get to hear, you know, haven't investigated like personal stories of post World War II, like Germans or whatever, but I'm sure a lot of those guys got wrecked by the drugs and stuff that went on during that time. And they were, it was unknowing. It's like, here, take this and you'll be, you know, a hero. And they got like, you know, liquid courage of dope. Well, they were getting literally like a narcotic, opium or heroin or something. And and meth. So they were literally
and then,
meth and
then
heroin.
killing their own officers, right? There's like cases of like they turned when they like couldn't get it anymore. They like turned on their officers and killed them. Because
there's
like,
a lot of
you're not going to give this to me. It's
crazy.
That's why
I think like if
I would agree with you.
I've read some dude who gave like a historical count, but if you look at the way Hitler acted, the way he talked, and the things he wrote, he probably was a dude that was like going down this paranoid addiction like rabbit hole because of the methamphetamine that he was probably getting fed to by his doctor, who was giving him literally heroin and methamphetamine. It's just wow,
crazy.
Anyways.
No, and I would agree, right. Like I think that there would have to be a cultural shift, and like here's how it's introduced. If you're curious, come here. Here's the medical. But I did 100% agree. Like I don't think I have met anyone who was like, bro, I just try to do some blow. I mean, my life just got great. You know what I mean? Like, I just haven't seen it. You know what I mean? Like, if they exist, that's great. Like,
the nature of the beast.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
like,
human wiring. It's just the way it is at the time being.
Yeah, I think any of that. But like, for me, it was like, to get back where we started, like by the time I kind of partied in college, and I was at home going into my junior year, and we were partying. Like, man, I was working and partying, trying to save money for my junior year, and working at the restaurant and going out and partying hard. And, I come home one night, like with like hives, like golf ball size hives on like my arms. And it's like super itchy, and like took some Benadryl, and I was like, man, I can't go to sleep. This is crazy. And so like I walked downstairs like 3 a.m. I was like, told my mother, I was like, hey, I'm going to the ER. I'm going to go get a shot of Benadryl. It was like, 5 miles from. I was like, look, I'm going to go get a shot of Benadryl. If there's any issues, I'll call you. But I mean, at the time I'm like 21 years old. Like, she's like, okay, cool. Like, if you want me to go with you? I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, I'm literally just going to drive up there. They'll give me a shot. I'll sleep for an hour and I'll come home. Like in my mind, it wasn't really a big deal. Yeah. And I showed up to the ER, and nurse checks me and she's like, what's going on? I was like, look, I've taken this much Benadryl. Like, these welts aren't going away. I can't figure out what it is. Just figured you give me a shot of Benadryl, like IV shot. Like, maybe it'll just, I don't know what I've eaten. Like, I've just been at work. I haven't done anything. Yeah. I haven't done anything out of the normal. I'm not really quite sure like what I've come in contact with that's like giving me crazy, but like, they're all over my skin. And, so she was like, okay, I'll give you a shot of Benadryl. And, just decided that like she was going to give me some liquid epinephrine to help speed up this recovery is what she told me, and she was like, hey, like, your resting heart rate's, pretty low. Do you know it's pretty low? Like, it's 52. Is that normal? And I was like, yeah, like I'm running like 10 to 13 miles a day right now, training. Like, this is our summer camp training. I know what's going on. And it's like, so it's pretty normal. Like, I'm in pretty good shape, Okay. And I'll never forget this, man. It's like etched into my mind. I was like laying in this bed and she gives me the Benadryl, and like, I kind of feel the instant, like within 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, like great relief is coming, you know? And,
let me ask real quick, hold on. Is it euphoric? We get Benadryl all the time, and I get the sense that maybe some people will get a euphoria.
I don't know if it's euphoric. It was like soothing, if that makes sense. Okay. It was like this like overwhelming sense of calm that was like, oh, yeah, okay. Like I don't want to scratch my skin off. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if it's euphoria would be the word, but definitely like a nerve inhibitor almost for a minute. Like, where it's like
there's folks out there that literally come and they want IV Benadryl. I think that it probably has some positive effect that they're seeking or something.
Yeah. I don't know if it's like a nerve inhibitor or blocker or like some type of response where like that feeling of just calm kind of hit me. It was like, oh man, okay. Like, I don't want to scratch my arms off. You know? And the lady's like, hey, look, I'm going to hit you with this liquid Benadryl. It's going to help speed up this recovery. You may feel funky for about 10 seconds. Epinephrine. You may feel funky for about 10 seconds, but like, it'll be fine. I'm like, all right, whatever, like, I don't care. Hit it with me. Hit me with it, and she injects this thing, and man, it's like an out of body experience. Like, I could see, like I could feel the blood flow like stopping from like my brain. And I was like, looked at this lady, I was like, hey, something isn't right. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, something isn't. And I just locked into a cardiac arrest and convulsions. And all I remember is like this lady who was standing in front of me by this IV thing, smacking the wall for the alarm. And then the next thing I know, I'm like waking up, throwing up in this pan. Like, what just happened? you know, like no clue. And there's like 6 people around me. I'm strapped up to this EKG machine, stuff all over me. You know, keep in mind, this is like 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Know?
What year is this?
This is 2006.
Trying to get an idea of medicine, because I'm going to jump in here. I'm an emergency. Everybody knows I'm an emergency physician, but I want to like give the sort of perspective of an emergency doctor, because it sounds like you were in an emergency department, probably were cared for by an emergency physician, and sort of give you some context for some of the stuff that probably has transpired. But you can keep going.
Yeah, you give me some context.
So,
that's cool.
You know, just so everybody knows, like, you know, it's pretty clear in our literature, there's huge advocates because the nature of anaphylaxis, true anaphylaxis, is literally a life and death, and it transpires very quickly. And as a general rule, especially somebody young and healthy, the epinephrine that we give, so 1 to 1,000 intramuscularly at a specific dose for anaphylaxis, as a general, its safety profile is like not a problem at all whatsoever. I get, you know, you can shoot it to me right now. Whoop-de-doo. I'm going to be just fine. But so there's a large school of thought is to be upfront and aggressive with it, and it's probably right. I say that, like, that's going to be the recommendation. That's what most of us going to do, because that's sort of how it's pinned. But, you know, if I have somebody who's got the same rash and it's been going for hours and hours, we've got like a second here. And, you know, you can try Benadryl. You know, steroids take a long time. It takes almost six hours, because it has to actually get inside the cell, and it has to, like, it inserts itself to basically break up at NF-kappa B, which is an inhibitor, which essentially prevents like inflammation and some of these other cascades and stuff. It's not having some immediate effect. But long and short of it is, if you came in and you were like, went from 0 to like rash and itchy, and I'm feeling, you know, hit them with the epi, that's totally fine. But how long has this been going on?
I want to say this started at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
So this has been hours.
And so, it'd been like 5 hours.
And I'm not critiquing, but just as a thing, like, all sounds like standard fare, but you keep talking. I'll try to make sense. Now, I will say what does not sound like standard fare is a young, healthy person receives epinephrine and then suddenly they're passed out. That doesn't make any sense to me as an emergency doctor looking at it. I don't, never seen that in my career, never heard of anything like that peripherally. I've been around in private group 37 doctors. We talk about everything, you know, any weird cases. That would have been a weird case. Never heard of such things, but doesn't mean it can't happen, but keep going.
So I'm like, I just kind of like, and I might have been blacked out for 10 seconds. I don't really know.
So just so everybody knows, epinephrine actually speeds up your heart rate, it would increase your blood pressure, all these things. So that's the opposite of passing out. Yeah. Passing out is you don't have perfusion to your brain. You would black out because your blood pressure is low, your heart rate's low. Yeah. Epinephrine doesn't do that.
So what ended up happening from what they told me was my heart rate went from 52 to like 2 something in like 3 seconds, thus inducing a mild cardiac arrest.
Right.
Where basically my heart stopped.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out why, you know. At which point, you know, everyone's kind of like, oh shit, we don't really know what just happened.
Yeah.
And like I go from having this nurse that had been in into like 3 doctors rotate in and out.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened. Tell me when you came in here. Like kind of like almost doing a rewind to maybe diagnose like, hey, why was this administered?
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Up until the point that it's like 8 a.m. and my mother's like, where are you? And I'm like, hey, I'm at the hospital and they're like telling me they want me to stay, you know? And she's like, cool, I'm coming. And I'm like, all right, cool, come see me, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And like 5 minutes after that phone call, I have the head of the ER at that point who's like, hey, man, we're going to have the head of our cardiologist department in here tomorrow. And he's going to come chat with you and like figure out, you know, what's going on, kind of whatever. And they had done like a blood screen on me and they'd asked me like, hey, you have anything in your system? I'm like, nah, you know, like I drink booze. And
what was legit?
They can, 12, 24 hours before I'd probably ingested 3 or 4 grams of cocaine. You know what I mean?
It was
like
cocaine only? Before. Was there anything else in there?
Alcohol and cocaine, you know.
Okay.
So, you know, I think this is, you know, so that was Saturday night at like 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., you know, when I started having this itch, and by the Friday night before I'd, you know, partied all night and just, you know, whatever. So, probably within 18, 24 hours of me having this issue, I had ingested a good amount of cocaine, probably more than most people. I'd built up a crappy tolerance or whatever. And of course, didn't tell the doctors that. They probably looked at my blood report. Like, yeah, okay, bro, this combination of you having this in your system that hasn't left your system, and then we just shot you up with epinephrine now makes sense.
Yeah,
And of course, I was a legal age, so they couldn't really tell my parents.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, Dr. Morris, I'll never forget, he's an awesome guy from, did med school at Chapel Hill, super nice guy. It was cool. We played math. He was on the basketball team with Michael Jordan. So he had like a picture in his office. I was like, bro, this is dope. Like he was at Chapel Hill in the 80s and he was on the team and super nice guy, big cardiovascular guy in Richmond's awesome, super nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey man, like, I know you're probably not telling your parents like everything that's going on, but like obviously you had ingested some stuff that maybe created this. Like I don't really care like what you do with your personal life.
Yeah.
But like now my job is to make sure you haven't damaged your heart for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like he's like, yeah, bro, like you're athlete, you do this stuff. Like it's now my like, obligation to make sure you're going to be okay. And like no damage was done because you basically were an idiot and lied to the nurse.
Yeah.
In so many words, like, he's obviously way more cordial than that. But I was like, so like, what does that mean? He's like, well, you're going to have a heart cath at 21 years old, bro. We're going to hop in there and we're going to take a look at this thing. And like, we're going to make sure you don't have any lasting effects from whatever just happened, from this reaction and causing this, mild heart attack. And I'm like, all right, cool, man, whatever. So they did all that. And it was cool. If you've probably sat in on a few of those and watched them. It's kind of cool, man. Cause like they knock you out, but you're not really out. And so you get to like watch this.
Yeah.
I get to sit here and watch these 4 monitors and one's got like all my vitals. And then one's the camera of this thing, like going in through like my hip and like up to the heart. And he releases this dye and it shows you all this cool stuff. And they're like talking to you. And apparently I told him I was like jealous of him because he had like a beautiful wife and all these kids like, man, your family's so beautiful. I wish I have a beautiful wife and all this stuff like that. He's like, man, you were very thankful of like you wanted a nice family and wanted like apparently I was telling him all this under whatever they give you. I don't even know what is it that they give you that kind of does that.
Probably generally, I suspect they probably give Versed because I don't put people on the cat table, but probably like fentanyl and maybe Versed. So a mixture basically what we call like sort of a moderate sedation or just mild sedatives to where you're sort of just happy and out of it.
Yeah. So just like I remember kind of like nodding out, but then waking right back up, and watching all this go down. And apparently I was just super happy to him. And I was like, man, you're the best doctor. I hope I have a family like you. I hope I have a beautiful wife. And he was like, man, thank you for all the compliments you gave me. And but I just kind of remember like watching these screens and this dye get released. And the funny part was like through all of this, like we couldn't figure out what I was allergic to. Like he knew what had created, he knew what had created the heart thing. He's like, look, man, I know what happened. Like you had a reaction between two chemicals that should not have been reacting inside your body.
Right.
The damnedest thing is I don't know what gave you the hives.
Right.
And like we've got to figure still out like why you were in here in the first place, So I did that and then I had to do stress test. Went back my junior year, like a month into season. He's like, look, man, I still don't really have any update. And I'm like, I'm going to give you a medical red shirt. Like I just want to make sure that like you don't do something that like I'm going to regret for the rest of my life. And I'm telling you to go play sports and something happens to you on the soccer field.
Let me jump it. So like what he's concerned about is that you could have had an arrhythmia, right? Like, so obviously there's some things that I don't understand and I have no idea that hopefully this is like, it's not like, Reed's not pressing charges or going to pursue something of, whenever it happened. But from the merge job perspective, I want to be clear. You got medicine through the IV. Whatever that epinephrine went through IV. As a general, and maybe things have changed since, I was in residency from 2011, 2014, and maybe we do things differently. I don't know the history of epinephrine, but as a general, ever since I've known it, epinephrine for anaphylaxis is always given intramuscularly. So he should have remembered a needle getting stuck into the muscle. And it's a different strength. So like if we give it through the IV, it's 1 to 10,000. So it's diluted out 1 to 1,000. So if you give the same amount that's 1 to 10,000, which is what we give through the IV, versus if they gave you 1 to 1,000, but put it through your IV at the same like dose or the same amount, they would have been literally giving you like a 10x dose of what they actually intended. So that would be my only concern. What he was describing is I like worry or wonder if maybe, but that does not negate the fact that legitimately there's good literature of people who are coke positive or cocaine. We have seen other effects from other drugs like beta blocking agents and stuff can actually induce vasospasm or potentially heart attack. So it is something to be aware of in someone cocaine, or at least they say this. We're careful about it. I've never seen it in my practice or someone else have it in their practice, but it is certainly possible that the blend of that cocaine and that epinephrine, for whatever reason, gave him a what's called a supraventricular tachycardia, which tends to be non-life threatening, and they tend to be like narrow complex, which basically you might get lightheaded and dizzy, but you generally don't die.
Yeah.
But there's a ventricular arrhythmia, which is different. These tend to be wide complex. They're very fast. I want to say I don't think they're generally 200s. It's more like 170s, like the numbers that you tend to see. And so but those can make people lightheaded, dizzy, but you also can just flat out die. And it's possible that you went into a ventricular arrhythmia for a brief period of time. And did they push on your chest or shock you or anything of that nature?
No, they didn't push on my chest. She just kind of said, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay?" That's what I remember when I was like, "Hey, I'm not okay."
Right.
She's like, "Are you sure you're not okay?"
Yeah.
She hit that. Well, all I remember is kind of like tightening up. I don't know if it's necessarily like a convulsion, but just like tightening up. It might have just been me blacking out versus like just
right,
boom. And then when I come in, there's people, when I'm coming to, I puke to my left and it's like some pan on the floor.
Yeah.
And like now 3 people are slapping me with the EKG machine to figure out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty quick. I mean, I wasn't out very long.
It broke on its own? Nobody gave you any medicine?
Broke on its own.
Yeah. So it's possible you went into whatever, even if it was a narrow complex rhythm, which tend to not be like, but if it's going 220, it absolutely can drop your blood pressure. And that is something that they feel lightheaded, dizzy, they might vomit. These are responses that you see sometime whenever they get hypertensive. So that's probably what transpired. But Coke definitely probably played a little bit of a role in there. But
yeah, for sure.
Anyways.
And look, and I don't know that, look, obviously this cardiologist that was now helping me wasn't there when this happened.
Sure.
Right? I mean, he's there 36 hours later going, "Hey man, I'm going to look at what went down. Like, let me just," but he calls back and it's like, "Hey man," and he redshirted me and brought me back in for another stress test. And basically ended up doing like 3 or 4 more stress tests. I had to go to like 4 or 5 different, allergen specialists. Got poked with a bunch of needles.
Right.
Shockingly, they can't find anything I'm allergic to.
Yeah.
Which, to me, looking back now, like it could have been whatever that cocaine was cut with. Like, and it took 12 hours for it to take effect.
Absolutely.
Because like I'm not, like I have seasonal allergies. I always have since I was a child, but I've never known that I've been allergic to anything. And so I'm like, it's probably whatever this thing was cut with that I ingested and is now, it just took 12 hours to take effect in my body.
Sure.
Because the cocaine part worked, but the rest of it's now in my bloodstream trying to figure out
what
is this that's now in your bloodstream that hasn't been in your bloodstream.
You could have had what we call like a histaminic reaction. Some people are sensitized, and you put something inside their bloodstream, and their histamine cells, which is what drives like the rash and the symptoms that you have whenever you get like a bee sting or something else. And it could have been this just histamine release from the crap that was in, along with the cocaine, or it could have been other things. You might have been, in a health standpoint, very you'd say just have a tendency towards atopy, or like where you'd have these not true anaphylactic reactions, but just sensitive, where you're going to develop this histamine release and rash because of your life and the junk that you were taking. But anyway, so like you've gone through this, which is wild. But so what I want to know is, like, was it then and there where you're like, I'm on the straight and narrow?
No, hell no. The ride's just getting started. You know what I mean?
Oh man.
Yeah. No,
youth.
The ride's just getting started.
Youth.
Dude, so that was probably one of the worst things to happen to me from a discipline and accountability standpoint at that point in my life, right? Because up to that point, my college had been, hey, I have practice, we have piss tests. If we go to the tournament, we do whatever in football and soccer. Like, yeah, the NCAA will just show up and ask you to pee in a cup.
Yeah.
So I had just kind of like try to make sure I was kind of on the straight and narrow for like in season in particular, where we just, you just made sure you were kind of rocking and rolling. And basically the way that it worked is every day I had practice at 4:00 every day. I had somewhere to be at 4 p.m. every day, from 4 to 6:30 or 4 to 7 every single day. I had to be at practice, And now all of a sudden I didn't have to be anywhere.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. I didn't, for a second I wasn't, but immediately I know where you're going.
So now it's like, well, you can get done with practice at 7:00. I got to do homework. I got to do whatever it is. I got to write an exam, or I got to write an essay. I got to do whatever, man. Now I have 2 hours to get my work done, and I got to go to sleep and wake up and do it all over again tomorrow, Right. So the discipline of, or we had 6 a.m. lifts. I got to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym, and we have to lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. or whatever it was. And, now I didn't have that responsibility. Now I was redshirted, and I was like, man, let me see what college life is like really about now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's like, man, I'm done with class at 1:00. I don't got anything to do till 8:00 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's get some beer. Let's play some Call of Duty. Sounds like Halo's calling my name, just was like a gateway for me to do whatever I need. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, cool. I'll get my work done. But bro, I was just sit here and get, drunk as shit and hang out with buddies. I mean, it was like just this bad excuse for I don't have anywhere to be. I don't want to be accountable to anymore.
Right.
So it kind of opened that up for a little bit. Into my junior and senior year, which was cool, only because at that point I was only taking classes in my major. I'd switched majors. I was pre-med, thought I was going to go to chiropractic school. I was with a girl for a long time from high school through college. His dad's a chiropractic neurologist, acupuncture, nutritionist guy that I kind of respected growing up, and really appreciated kind of his holistic. I mean, look, she was one of 5 kids, all birthed at their house with their mom in their bathtub. None of them had ever been sick. Come to find out now, probably it's more because he was super healthy. They never had sodas. They all ate.
Yeah.
They all ate all natural their whole lives. They didn't eat processed anything. You know what I thought. I was now I'm learning. Oh man, it was more because the appetite of what you created from a family. These kids weren't sick because they were eating.
Sure.
You were buying expensive food and the nice stuff, not this processed BS that everyone else has been eating, and that's why your kids never have any issues. You know what I mean? But it was funny. I think the second semester, my sophomore year, I got into OChem, and it took 3 weeks. I was like, bro, this is for the birds. I'm out. I am not doing this crap.
Yeah.
And so I switched to a history major. I'm going to go to law school. I'll just go do history, poli sci. I'll be fine. We've had some fun, just focused on really history and economics. And so at that point, it was not easy, but I was at a point in college, I had 3 semesters left, and everything I was doing was 3 classes that I wanted to be in.
Right.
And it's so it's all right, cool. I had these three classes a day that I enjoy. I don't really care. This is easy for me because you're not now taking stuff that was requirements or prereqs or stuff that you just didn't really care about, that were check marks,
Yeah.
So man, I just get drunk all the time. I just whatever. Hey, it's cool. I'm passing, getting all A's and B's. Who cares?
Yeah.
Which was fine. But then, I really, really wanted to go to law school. I kind of talked to my pops at the time. My dad and his wife at the time were living in maybe Edenton, North Carolina. And I was like, hey, I want to go to law school. And,
that's at.
I was like, you paying for my law school? And he's like, no. And I'm resentful. I'm like, I don't understand. You paid for my sister to go get her master's. And he said, you're correct. Your sister went to a state school for 4 years.
That's right. Yeah.
And you tries to go to a private school.
What is the tuition?
At Hampden-Sydney at the time, it was $56,000 a year.
A year?
A year. Yeah.
God.
And my sister had gone to the state school. And my dad had been a big part of Virginia Tech, so I think it was costing him $7,000.
Yeah.
So he paid 4 years.
No scholarship for soccer?
For Division 3, I had an academic scholarship that I lost my first year because I had to keep above a 3.0, and I had a 2.1 after my freshman year.
Oh my gosh.
So I could have saved him $12,000 a year.
Yeah. I can't believe you stayed
But I partied.
$50,000 a year.
And so he just, I will tell you, after my first semester of freshman year, he had a very serious talk with me.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey man, if you're going to stay here, I think my first semester, school was easy for me as a high schooler. I just didn't care.
Sure.
And, I'm not the brightest, but I'm not the dumbest. And I was a pretty decent test taker if I could go do it. So I think I graduated a 4.3 and 23rd out of 500 kids. And I didn't really try that hard. I was like, college will be the same, and it's just not, it's you have to show up, you have to read the stuff. You can't just show up on test day and bullshit your way through it.
Right.
And I learned hard way. It's my freshman year was oh, wow, this isn't going to work. Wait a minute, I got all C's and a D. Wait a second, I've never seen this in my life, And I think I had a 1.87 my first semester freshman year. And so I had to spend the next 4 years. And I had a pretty serious talking to from my father. It's hey, look, the agreement is I'll pay for this, but you're going to put effort in, or we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And so then I did. And, I ended up graduating with like a 3.4. So it took everything I had the last 3 years to like, hey, I had to lock down to focus to get it back up. And
Clearly,
I think
you dug out,
and
man.
I think I
You're
literally
3.4,
had
that's-
like all A's the last like 3 or 4 semesters just
had
to get
to.
it. Yeah. Just to get it back. But at that time it was like classes I cared about and my
Right.
senior thesis and stuff. So it was like easier for me, but like, yeah, it was a grind,
Sure.
But in the back of my mind, that's kind of like the way my mindset works. Is like, hey man, if I have a task, I'm going to show up to do that task as long as I need to show up to do it. And then once it's good, I'm out. But like,
Yeah.
so I had to show up to do that task. It's like, hey, if you want this paid for, and so then I didn't, that was off the table going into my senior year. I talked to him. He's like, nah, I'm good. Like you can do whatever you want, but
Yeah.
that's going to be on your dime, and which is fine. Like I probably should have, but I had interned. A good friend of mine, had moved to Colorado. She went to Yale. She's super successful. I was like our best friend growing up, like another sister to me. And she went to Colorado and started working for a craft brewery and was like, hey, your senior break in Christmas, why don't you come out and intern with us and see if you like this like craft beer world? And I was like, beer and sales? Yeah, I'm in,
Yeah.
Like, take me to Boulder,
Yeah.
And so I went out to Lyons, Colorado and worked for like 3 weeks over Christmas break, learning about Oscar Blues Brewery and like about their beer and kind of set it up to kind of be their rep back in Richmond when I graduated college, So I had to go back for spring semester and finish up and, still kind of partying and just like living life, but like doing whatever. And I basically set up to be their rep. And about a month before I was to graduate, that brewery that I was going to work for had grown so much that they hired this guy that was at the time was at Coors and then came and worked for Oscar Blues to help them kind of grow. And basically was like, hey man, I know you were going to work for us and you had all this stuff, but like we're streamlining this and we're really going to focus on the West Coast. We're going to ignore the East Coast markets right now. So like,
You were out
hey
just
man,
like that?
Yep. Like I'm not sorry.
Bummer.
And the good that had come from that is I had met the distributors that were in the local market. Like, hey, I'm going to be working for you. Like, introduce myself and whatever. And so I just called one of them. I was like, hey, man, like, here's the deal. They're not coming into the East Coast right now. Like, I'd love to come interview for a job. Can I come sell beer for you guys? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. I went through 4 rounds of interview and, like got the job selling beer. So I was like, dude, this is great. Like 23 years old, I'm selling 22, selling beer.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Right.
And it's funny, man, the way that my mindset works, and you probably know more from my medical, and you may see this traditionally in people who are addicts or alcoholics or whatever, is like when you're focused and fixated, they're some of the best people you ever meet, like in business or whatever,
Sure.
when they're driven by the
Right.
right things, right?
Yeah.
And so the way that my life works, like, hey, if like the best analogy I can give people, I try to give people is like I want to be Steph Curry, but I want to shoot the ball 20 times a day, not 3,000 times a day.
Yeah.
But like if it's like a new project, I'll shoot that ball 3,000 times a day
Yeah.
until you give me my attaboy.
Yeah.
And once you give me that attaboy,
Then you're just
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm on the bench going, hey, bro, you still going to put me in this game,
Yeah.
And so that was the deal with this company. It was like, hey, man, like in the alcohol world, for those who don't know, in Virginia at least, and most states are like this, there's where in alcohol sales, there's called what they call on-premise and off-premise sales. Yep. On-premise is places that you can buy and consume alcohol on the premises, restaurants, bars, venues, whatever. Off-premise would be things like a convenience store, a grocery store, a Sam's Club. And so the thing was, the thing that was desirable for all of us young 20s was to be the on-premise reps, because the on-premise reps that dealt with all the restaurants and all the vendors and all the stuff in downtown, like you got to be the beer guy, you got to be the Bud Light guy.
Yeah.
At downtown Richmond and all these cool places, and you had the credit card and you got to take everybody out and you got to go to all the concerts and so of course that's what you want, that's like the show and they're like, yeah, like, hey, to earn your stripes, man, you got to do an off-premise route first, but if you do a good job and that opportunity comes available, like we'll give you the opportunity, but you just got to prove yourself. So I'm like, cool, I'll take that bet. Like I'll bet on me. I'll take when you put that challenge in front of me, I'll take it.
Sure.
So I took over a route and grew it by like 400% in like first year.
Yeah.
And it's just like, hey, build relationships, go. And that was like a rough, for me, it was like rough, but fun. Cause the day had to start at 5 a.m. You got to check in at your first convenience store at 5 a.m.
Wow.
These little computers that Anheuser-Busch had back then with these little flip talk phones. You had to log into this VPN network and show. And
Yeah.
it's like, 2008, 2009. And it's like, yeah, you got to get into this, and like you had to show that you were there, and they could track you. They can know, and you had to sync your computer every 2 hours. So they knew where you were at, and they knew where your orders were, and
right.
And it was great for me because like I just was like the most efficient and easiest I can make this. I mean, basically work from like 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. every day, and I'd be done at 1 o'clock. Well, it was great.
Yeah.
Like, I could drink at 2, I could drink from 2 to 7, 2 to 9. I could sleep for 5 hours, 6 hours, wake up and do it all over again. This is fantastic. You know what I mean? But like I focused, you know what I mean? I focused. And, you know, pretty quickly after the first year, like, hey man, like here's an on-premise route. Here's the restaurants. You have Upper Broad Street. You have all this fun near West End and Richmond. And that was great because that perk came with like a credit card that you were allowed to buy alcohol on and taxi cabs. And that was it. It's like.
For who?
Anybody you wanted to at any of these restaurants and bars or venues. So
Really?
like if I was like, hey man, Adam, you own Buffalo Wild Wings on Broad Street. Cool, man. Hey, I'm coming up here on Monday Night Football. I'm going to spend $500 on Bud Light. Tell everybody to come. And I'd be the guy at the bar. Just like, who wants beers? You know, and I just throw out beers and just be drinking all night and hanging out. And then you turn in your receipt as long as you're supporting. And you were supposed to use it to like leverage relationships and like help, you know, hey, or if you had a new, you know, shock top came out and it was like, we were trying to fight Blue Moon. It's like, dude, if you get a shock top tap on. And so then what you would do to help promote the beer is like, you'd put a new shock top in at a restaurant. You'd go in there and you'd buy everyone in the restaurant a free shock top. And then they'd get to taste it and go, hey, if you instead of ordering Blue Moon next time, order a shock top. Like, here's this, whatever.
Yeah. It's almost like drug reps with doctors.
Yeah, correct.
Except for the opposite in the beer market.
Yeah, correct, right? It's like you're pushing that product to get people to know it, right? It's the same thing, right? And the perks were like the National downtown Virginia. It's like a huge like amphitheater, you know what I mean? And so we had a suite there, and it's like, hey, you own this restaurant, and I want you to put my beer on tap. Hey man, what concert do you want to go see? Oh, you wanted to sing String Cheese Incident. Cool, they're coming next Friday. I got 5 tickets for you, man. Come on down to the suite. I'll pay for all your booze. I'll put you up. Let's go. We'll watch the concert from up in the suite. And so you're just smoozing people, right?
Yeah.
And you're selling beer, you know, you're starting your route at like 9:30 and 10 instead of 5 a.m. and you're done by 3 and you're just hitting some restaurants. And it was great for me as the alcoholic that I didn't know I was at that point, but I was like, bro, this is great. Like I get all the free booze I want. The problem was like, goes back to like, hey, I have to keep up the show and I can't let them know I'm drunk. So if I take this guy that owns this restaurant out and I'm going to get him partied and get him drunk and send him home, well, I can't be more drunk than he is. So I'll just do some drugs in the bathroom.
Yeah.
To make sure he doesn't think I'm drunk and being an idiot.
Coming back to cocaine again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then that cycle became like, oh, well, this is a drug that'll make me not appear this way. And so then I come back to cocaine. It's like, well, now I need to use it. Now it's justified. Now it's like, I need this. I need this to look this way.
Yeah.
You know? And like me catches up with me, you know, like eventually I'm not like, I go from like showing up every day to like, I start doing orders from the phone. I start calling people, hey man, what do you need? How many kegs you need this week? Like, I'm not even going to these places to order beer anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, hey man, what's going on? I'm like, oh, nothing, man. You know, like you get in trouble. Oh no, man, I'm good. I play it off. You know, master manipulator, man. A lot of us alcoholics and addicts, you know, for me, I can speak for me, man. Like, and some of the people I met, man, we're good manipulators. Like we're good at getting what we want, like, and keeping up the appearances and until it becomes someone else's problem. Oh man, they're screwing me. They're not paying me enough. They're not doing this. They're not doing this, whatever. And you know, look, dude, my drinking had gotten out of hand. My drug use had gotten out of hand. Like, you know, it was really me, but to me, it's like, man, it's everyone else's fault. You know, I'm like, you're making me do this, man. And it's just not worth it, man. This just isn't, you know. Meanwhile, I was like 25-year-old kid making a pretty good living, like, you know, and they just, you know, it's all, you know, for me, it was always someone else or something wasn't right or circumstance wasn't right or someone was screwing me. And it just led to me leaving that business and getting introduced to the self-serve yogurt business, which was Sweet Frog at the time. Some godparents of mine I'd grown up with, you know, bought into a franchise. We opened Outer Banks. 2 in the Outer Banks and 1 in Wilmington and 1 in Jacksonville. But much the same, right? Like any new task I'm tasked with, I'm going to work really hard to get it off the ground and get it going. But then once it's kind of coasting, it's like, you know, I call it the monkey bar mind. Like anytime I need a new challenge, like I'll grab that monkey bar ring and I'll hold on as tight as I can, as long as I can, and like try to make it work. But the problem is like my other hand's constantly searching for something else. Yeah. Like there's always something next. What's next? I need to let go of this monkey bar. It's not going to last for forever.
Sure.
You know, but like, you know, turns out like, you know, you try to get a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds to like open up and run your businesses because you just want to party. It's probably not the best idea as a business owner. You know what I mean? Like, you know, eventually it'll catch up with you. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, hey, what are you doing on there? Why the store wasn't open today? What do you mean? Like, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, you know, not good when like your 16, 17-year-old employees like knocking on your door at Wrightsville Beach going, hey, bro, you going to come to work today? It's like 2 p.m. Store's been locked since 10 a.m. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry. You know, I'd been up for, you know, 36 hours.
Yeah.
And, so me catches up with me, but then the problem is, it's our business partners, man. They don't treat me right. They don't pay me enough to do what I'm doing. I'm the one putting in all the work.
I want to step out and just say, like, because I get to interact with a lot of people who are substance abusers. A lot of, there's a lot of people's lives that go down the substance abuse, route, and somehow it ends up coming back to the emergency department. There's usually a scenario or a case or something, whether they're coming there because now they're suicidal because they've lost everything. Maybe it's they're doing drugs and now they're in a fight in the middle of the street or over in the bar and they end up coming to me. They've been doing drugs and they're in a car accident or some sort of trauma and they're showing up to me. But it's amazing how drugs and people find their way back to the emergency department. And one thing that I've noticed, it just seems to be a common theme what you're describing, especially people who are they're not in a place where they really are making the progress and getting away from it. It's not judgmental at all. I know what I'm working with, but they tend to have this, it's blaming everybody else and it's everyone else's fault or it's my circumstance or something. They just have a natural tendency about it's not like this personal ownership or responsibility, mentality at all. And I just see it and I know that's the drugs.
Yeah.
It just seems that's the drugs. It must be the drugs in their mind and their psychology.
Yeah, it changes that psychology, right? It's the outside world's fault.
For
right?
sure. Drugs absolutely have literally, it changes the neurochemistry of your brain. We can see that. MRIs, there's various studies and different sort of things that are crazy interesting where certain parts of the brain, sort of shrink, certain parts of the brain grow based on literally these substances. It's altering you. There can be a shift and you can balance back to the normal. But I mean, I don't know, we'll get to probably what, not specifically what program, but,
yeah.
You probably were going through some sort of program and you did detox and stuff and there's a bunch of this education and stuff you did, but, you're always in some sense a recovering whatever you are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's always there. Some of the impacts, we can do all kinds of things to grow new neurons and pathways around some of these, faulty pathways that this reward center kind of deal where we know we do the cocaine and it has this reward and we just want to seek. We can slowly over time sort of the scales for, your satisfaction about things. You're not literally living in this dopamine deficient state all the time where you burnt yourself out because you've used so much methamphetamine or cocaine or whatever. Over time it can balance itself out. But I think there probably is still some effects that exist, especially long-term heavy drug users with real potent drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, some of these things. But
yeah,
anyhow.
it gets you there. I mean, that's very common, right? The woe is me, the world's against me.
Yeah.
Very common, at least for me. You know what I mean? It's always someone else's fault. Why do you care what I'm doing?
So when was the turning point? What was
yeah,
it?
so
that
I left Sweet Frog. Let's just fast forward. I got into the car business and I'll speed up to basically.
Did you sell Sweet Frog?
So sold out my portion of what I owned, and they kept
successful.
theirs.
Were you still able to?
Yeah,
some success
it's good.
from
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I had a life to the outside world that people would have been like,
Sure.
member of the country club. I have all the stuff.
So then you get to car business. You're like,
get to the car business.
Getting out. What was real quick? What was the instigator for you to sell or to get out of that? You were just like, I'm not in this no more.
Because I didn't want to work hard anymore. It was,
Gotcha.
It was that monkey bar. It's like, hey, I'm good. I don't want to do this work hard
car business
and give
looking
money.
for something maybe more secure and just steady.
Yeah, I know. I just literally didn't want to leave Wilmington. I didn't want to. I had burned bridges in Richmond the way that my behavior was by the end of the time I left there.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to go back to the Outer Banks, which is we had a family home there growing up. I was like, man, it sucks in the off season. I love Wilmington. I'd fallen in love with this area.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I met some guys like, hey, man, you ever want a job? Let me know. So I was like, hey, bro, I want a job. He's like, bro, come here tomorrow. You can start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was just a way. Honestly, it was like a temporary stop. I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. This is never going to be long term, but I got to do something to
Sure.
keep money coming in. And look, it went well. You know what I mean? I ended up doing finance. I started at one dealership, moved to another dealership, doing finance there, and a great living. Man, look, you can make a really good living in that business. It's just a lot of hours you have to invest.
Yeah.
And I got to the turning point in fall of 2016, man. I had, and I'll back up a little bit because this pertains to you. You're just talking about ER. I gotten to the point where I would go through these stints where I knew I probably wasn't a normal alcohol and drug user, but didn't really know how to accept it, late for work constantly or whatever. You started affecting me in ways that had never affected me before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One thing I was always able to do was shut up, show up, do whatever you need to do, and go home and do whatever you need to on your own time.
Yeah.
And it started affecting that. And in late spring of 2016, I checked myself in the ER because like I had realized I'd like been up all night.
Always comes back to the ED.
You know, I'd been up all night. I couldn't go to sleep. I'd ingested godly amounts of cocaine and alcohol. I knew I couldn't go to work. So I was like, where's the only place I can go that they're not going to fire me?
Yeah.
They know.
Right.
You know. So I was supposed to be at work at like 8:30. So at 8 o'clock, I checked myself into the emergency room. Like,
What was your complaint?
Hey, man.
What did you check
I had
yourself
chest
in saying?
problems. I was having chest pains. I was having chest pains. Like, you know, heart rate was probably 180, whatever it was. You know what I mean? I had chest pains. I was having an anxiety attack.
At
I
this
didn't know what to
time,
do.
were you pretty numb to the cocaine? Like you take a lot of cocaine? to make
Yeah. It took me a lot. You know what I mean? You know, more than most would probably ever.
Sure.
Yeah, it just built up such a tolerance over the years that, like, you know, most doctors go, "Man, you ingested that, weren't you dead?" It's like, well, yeah, because I've been ingesting this amount for a long amount of time for a duration period. Like my body just doesn't care. You know. Yeah. And you know, I checked in. You know, like, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I can't sleep. I don't know why I can't do anything. You know, yada yada. And you know, you have a drug problem, you have an alcohol problem. No. You know, doing blood work. And a buddy of mine that actually is also in the CrossFit community happens to also be a doctor in the ER.
Who?
This guy, his name's James. James McKinney. Do you know James?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jim McKinney, for sure. He's a neurologist. He's not an ER.
Yeah, but he happened to be working in the ER. I think that.
Don't miss out on the second half of Reed's story as he confronts his life of addiction and recounts his subsequent path to freedom, success, and giving back.